Have you ever wanted to learn a new language, pick up an instrument, or just finally get good at something new, but you felt like, who has the time? Well, what if I told you there's a blueprint, a method to learn almost any skill you want in less than 24 hours of actual, focused work? Yeah, let's break down exactly how it's done. So for what feels like forever, we've had the 10,000-hour rule beaten into our heads. You know, the idea that it takes this monumental, soul-crushing amount of time to become an expert. But today, we are throwing that myth right out the window. We're going to look at a totally different blueprint, a method that's not about becoming a grandmaster, but about getting surprisingly good at something fast. I want you to think about this for a second. So many of us sat through 4 years of high school Spanish, right? But can you actually hold a conversation? Probably not. Now, imagine you spent just a few weeks totally immersed in a place like Mexico. You'd probably learn more than in all 4 of those years combined. That right there, that's what we call the efficiency gap, and it proves that how you learn is way, way more important than how long you spend learning. So the big question is, how do we close that gap? Well, we're going to walk through this exact 5-step blueprint. First, we'll ditch the old mindset. Then we'll learn to master the natural learning curve. After that, we'll break the skill down, practice with real intention, and finally, build a system for getting better, faster. All right, step 1, and this is a big one. We have to completely reframe how we even think about learning. And it all starts by getting rid of that one-size-fits-all 10,000-hour idea and instead getting crystal clear on our purpose. I mean, the biggest problem with the 10,000-hour rule is it pretends all skills are the same. But just think about it. Is it really as hard to get good at the triangle as it is to master the viola? No way, of course not. The time it takes depends completely on the skill. And even more importantly, what getting good actually means to you. And that's why this is so critical. You have to define your purpose with total clarity. Don't just say, I want to learn Spanish. No. Use a template like this. I want to get good enough to hold a 5-minute conversation by my trip in June in order to order food and ask for directions. You see the difference? It turns this vague wish into a concrete, totally achievable mission. Okay, so once that mission is locked in, we can move on to step 2. Understanding the predictable path that every single skill follows. Because once you see the map, you can navigate it way more effectively. Every single time you learn something new, you're going to follow this S-shaped curve. And at first, it's going to feel painfully slow, like you're putting in the work but getting nowhere. This is the flat part of the S, the tail, and it's where almost everyone gives up. But if you just push through, you hit this amazing turning point that shoots you into a period of super fast growth. So how do you escape that initial slow, frustrating part? The secret is concentration. Spreading your practice out, an hour here, an hour there over a year, it just doesn't work. Your brain kind of ignores it. But when you concentrate that effort, say 24 hours over just 10 days, you force your brain to wake up, pay attention, and actually start building those new connections. And it turns out there's kind of a magic number for that, about 90 minutes a day. That's the sweet spot. That level of consistency signals to your brain, hey, this is important, and it kicks on something called diffuse mode thinking. That's where your brain keeps working on the problem in the background, even when you're not practicing. It's how you unlock that rapid growth. And this is exactly why this whole method is so powerful. Let's go back to Spanish. If you learn just the 1,000 most common words, you can suddenly understand about 85% of everyday conversation. Now, to get truly fluent, yeah, you need thousands more words, but look at that. The biggest wins come right at the beginning. Our goal here is to grab that massive 85% as quickly as we possibly can. Which leads us perfectly into our 3rd step. Once you realize that a small, focused input can create a huge output, the whole game becomes about figuring out what that high-impact stuff actually is. Oh man, people fall into this trap all the time. They say, my goal is to get better at starting conversations. So what do? They spend months on a language app memorizing random vocabulary. But the actual skill they needed to practice was, well, starting conversations. It's all about making sure what you're practicing is what you actually want to be good at. So here's how you do it. This is the process. You take the first 2 hours of your 24 and you just do research. You map out the entire skill like it's a tree with different branches. Then you identify the core components, and finally you find the 3 sub-skills that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. And that's where you start. So for example, giving a great presentation isn't just one skill, right? It's a whole mix of things. It's storytelling, it's slide design, it's delivery. And even slide design can be broken down further into things like color theory and typography. When you deconstruct it like this, it stops being this big, scary monster and becomes a series of small, manageable things you can actually work on. Okay, so now we know what to practice.
But step 4 is all about how to practice. Because just showing up and putting in the time, it's not enough. The quality of your practice is everything. And here's the secret. Real growth usually feels uncomfortable.
I absolutely love this story from one of the sources. The author's playing a tennis match, and during a break, he looks over at his opponent. The other kid is busting out index cards, analyzing every single point, every swing. Meanwhile, our guy is just daydreaming about Pokemon. Now, who do you think won that match? It's just the perfect picture of active, focused practice versus just going through the motions.
And that really highlights the huge difference between two kinds of practice. There's mindless practice, which is just doing the same thing over and over in your comfort zone. It feels easy, but it leads you straight to a dead end. Then there's deliberate practice. That's about analysis, constantly pushing yourself into discomfort. And that's the only way to get real, continuous growth.
And that dead end? It actually has a name. It's called the OK plateau. It's that point where you're still doing the thing, but you've completely stopped getting better. Think about the person who's been typing with just 2 fingers for 20 years, or that friend who's been playing guitar for a decade, but still only knows how to play Wonderwall. They've put in the hours, but their brain is on autopilot, so they never improve.
So, how do you make sure you never hit that plateau? You structure your practice. Try this. For every hour you practice, spend the first 20 minutes just warming up and reviewing what you already know. But for the other 40 minutes, you have to be pushing your limits. You have to be trying things that are just a little bit beyond what you can do comfortably. That's it. That's where the growth happens. And that brings us to our final step, step 5. This is the one that pulls it all together. Because to practice deliberately and push your limits, you need a way to know if what you're doing is actually working. You have to build feedback loops. So what's a fast feedback loop? Just look at this example. A slow loop is when you do like 50 practice questions and only check your answers at the very end. But a fast loop, that's doing just one question and then immediately reviewing it to see if your thinking was right, correcting it, and then moving on. The faster you get that feedback, the faster you can fix your mistakes and get better.
And honestly, the best way to do this is to adopt what's called the 1,000 experiments mindset. Just stop thinking of your practice sessions as these high-stakes performances where you have to be perfect. Instead, treat every single attempt like a small, low-stakes experiment. You're not trying to succeed or fail, you're just gathering data on what works. It takes all the pressure off and makes learning so much faster.
So there you have it. That's the 5-step blueprint. Ditch the old rules, understand the curve, break down the skill, practice with intention, and build fast feedback loops. It's a system to learn pretty much anything in 24 hours of focused work. So, the only question left is, what are you going to learn first?